Good afternoon, everybody. With the quorum present, the Regional Maricopa Continuum of Care Board is now called to order. Please turn on your microphone when speaking and mute when not speaking. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items on today's agenda or on items that fall under the COC's jurisdiction. If you would like to comment at today's meeting, please fill out a white request to speak card by the door and give it to MAG staff. If you parked in the garage, parking validators are available by the door. If you purchased a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available from MAG staff. Brian, will you please take roll call? Please share that you are here and your organization after Brian calls your name.
Letitia Brown Gambino.
Present. Keys to change.
Tim Birch. Jessica Cruz. See you,
American
Jessica.
Connection. Thank you.
Liz DaCosta.
Hello, Liz DaCosta here with Access.
Chris Hallett.
Here, City of Peoria.
Michael Hughes.
Here, A New Leaf.
Jessica Raymond.
Here, Atlantic Development and Investments.
Charles Sullivan.
Here with ABC Housing.
Sienna Valdez. Cricket Weatherington.
I am present, AHI.
Danielle Wright.
President ACES-DB.
Co-chair Rachel Milne.
Present, City of Phoenix.
And co-chair Vicki Phillips.
Present, Community Bridges.
Wow, lots of members here today. Thanks, everybody. The next item on the agenda is a call to the audience. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under the Continuum of Care Board but are not on the agenda, or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience agenda item unless the committee requests an exception to this limit. Brian, were there any comments received or anyone who wishes to offer comments at this time?
There were no public comments received and no one offering public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to item number 3. The next item for approval is the consent agenda. Items 3A, 3B, and 3C are on the item for consent. Actually, I think we go through 3E. Items 3A, 3B, 3C, 3D, and 3E are on the agenda for consent. Does any a member of the board have any questions, comments, or request a presentation of any of these items? Not seeing any questions. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
This is Vicki in motion.
Thank you, Vicki. Can I have a second?
This is Letitia, a second.
Thank you, Tish. We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion of the motion from the board or comments from the public? Seeing none, for those in the room, we will take a voice vote. Those in favor, please say yay.
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 Those opposed, please say nay. And I'll now ask Brian to proceed with a roll call of those joining online.
Tisha Brown Gambino.
Yay.
Jessica Cruz. Jessica Cruz.
Can never figure out the mute. Yay.
Yay. Liz DaCosta.
Yay.
Chris Hallett.
Yay.
Jessica Raymond.
Yay.
Charles Sullivan.
Yay.
Danielle Wright.
Yay.
Awesome. The motion passes. We will now move on to our next agenda item. Item number 4. For the next item, Arizona DHS Senior Epidemiologist Maxwell Short will present on rates of HIV in the county and state. Thank you for being here, Mr. Short.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. Like mentioned, my name is Max Short. I'm an HIV surveillance epidemiologist at the Arizona Department of Health Services. I just have a couple of quick slides to go through just to show some incidence rates and counts in statewide and in Maricopa County. Next slide, please. So first, we'll start off with some testing data. This is publicly funded testing from our HIV prevention program. You can see in the gray bar, which is 2020 and April through the end of the year, there's a significant decrease in the number of publicly funded testing that was performed, most likely due to the COVID-19 pandemic. That decrease in testing is also reflected in our counts and rates in 2020. However, as we came out of the pandemic, our testing has gone back up to not only pre-pandemic levels, but have actually increased over pre-pandemic levels. Next slide, please. So here's our incident cases in Maricopa County from 2018 to 2022. As you can see, in 2020, there was that dip, likely due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the decrease in testing services that were offered across the county and across the state as a whole. We actually saw mostly a decrease in the number of new testing. People who were living with HIV in Maricopa County and the state actually continue to get their regular 6-month to 12-month testing. So the biggest decrease in testing was our new diagnoses. And post-pandemic, we've come up to about 591 cases in 2020. Again, partially due to not only an increase in testing back to pre-pandemic levels, but an increase over pre-pandemic levels. Next slide, please. So we're just kind of comparing Maricopa, which is our highest incidence county. You see the statewide, again, a decrease in 2020 and an increase above pre-pandemic levels to 890 new cases in the state of Arizona. Next slide, please. And then our rates. We see that the rates in Maricopa are actually higher compared to the statewide rates. That's due to the high population of Maricopa County. It has about 70 to 80% of the entire population of the state in Maricopa County. So high population plus high count gives us a higher rate compared to our statewide. And I believe that's it. Yeah. So I'm happy to take any questions about this data or data that we collect or data we don't collect. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Thank you so much, Max. I know this this request for a presentation came out of our point in time count numbers from this year. So thank you for providing us with that additional information. Brian.
Thanks, Mr. Short, for coming in today. One of the reasons that we had wanted to discuss this as a group is just because we saw, a relatively significant increase in the number of people experiencing homelessness who were recently diagnosed with HIV/AIDS, and I got the sense, speaking with your department at one point, that that this could be attributed to sort of issues with the data in the way that we were counting, and that's part of the reason we wanted to see what your data showed. And so I was going to ask you, number one, do you feel like that is accurate? Can you talk at all about that difference? And then the second thing is just, could you describe some of the challenges that your department has in tracking HIV/AIDS across people who are experiencing homelessness?
Yeah, absolutely. Great questions. The limitation of homeless data within our data. So all of our HIV surveillance data is stored within the electronic HIV/AIDS reporting system, or EHARS. And those are really, a lot of that data is really point in time. Someone's diagnosed, they get contacted by a disease intervention specialist, either at Maricopa County or here at the state, and they're interviewed. And typically, people put an address down because the labs really ask for an address. So most people do put an address down, whether that's an actual address, whether it's family member or friend's address. So we don't capture homeless data really well. We captured a little bit, and I think and the reason I didn't present on it is I'm pretty sure it's an underreported number. just because I think so many people provide an address, whether that's really where they're living or if it's just they don't feel comfortable not having an address, or the labs kind of maybe push a little bit harder than they should to get an address. We have seen an increase in the number of IV drug users who are testing positive for HIV, and that is historically been a transient community. So it wouldn't be, I don't think, a big stretch to say there has been an increase in the number of those who are displaced, unhoused, temporarily housed, living with HIV in Maricopa County and the state as a whole.
Thank you.
Just,
Go ahead, Tish. Sorry.
I just want to say, Max, I'm wondering what address folks use that are unhoused, because they could be using the key campus address. We have just approximately 7,000 individuals that are using our address for their mail that are unhoused. So after, I'd like to set up some time to speak with you about some of the strategies you may be able to use to track those unhoused folks.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to.
Any other questions for Max? Seeing none, I just want to say thank you, Max, so much for being here and providing us with that update today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda item 5, MAG staff will walk us through the quarterly homelessness trends report.
Thank you. This is Cleo with MAG. Welcome to the latest quarter of our homelessness trends report. This is tracking April through June data. And as a reminder, we are still seeing that spike there in those October numbers from the outreach data definition change that we implemented back then. Okay, to start us off, we're just looking at our actively homeless households. So these are those who have recently engaged with service providers in our system. We see here there is a slight increase. Overall, you see that increase happening from April to May, and then a slight drop from May to June, and mostly reflected there in the singles numbers, which is the lighter blue line underneath that. And then if you look below to the family numbers, we see a more steady increase throughout our last quarter. Moving down to our new to system numbers. So these are those who are experiencing homelessness for the first time. And we do see this quarter, we did have a slight increase there at the beginning of the quarter, and then a slight drop in June. Other aspects of our inflow into the system include people who are returning from housing and returns from inactive. And they saw basically the same trend as the new to system. So overall, our inflow does seem to be slightly lower year over year, but we don't have that definitive trending downwards yet, but we're definitely, it doesn't seem as if we have an upward trend happening. So that is good news that this continues to be another quarter in which those who are entering our homelessness system, that number isn't fluctuating upwards drastically. Underneath that, a look at outflow. This is a look at our positive exits, which these are the people who are leaving the homelessness system and moving into housing on their own. So this quarter, we do have a very slight decrease there, remains pretty steady from the previous quarter. Overall, our outflow also continues to be pretty steady without significant changes. If you sort of can see how a trend line would look through there, where we do have those spikes in those other quarters, but overall, not tons changing in our outflow either. And that is a number we would like to see go up. So kind of balances with the good news of the inflow. If we move down to the next page, this is where we take a look at demographics of households for those who are in our system. Like most quarters, this really doesn't fluctuate tons from quarter to quarter. We seem to be pretty consistent in who is coming in and out of our system, but always good reference material for you to have if you're ever writing reports or need to look at, what the demographic snapshot is of our homelessness system. And if you move down, you get our age groups as well as a comparison to census data across gender, race, and ethnicity to get a sense for the disparities that exist in our community versus those who are experiencing homelessness. Something exciting to look forward to is that this age group category, it has been pointed out to us that 25 through 61 age range has the majority of our clients. Wouldn't it be great if that was broken out a little bit more so we can see where they are falling in there? And working with our analytics team who prepares this report for us, we are going to be able to figure out a way to visualize that a little bit better. So something to look forward to next quarter. Moving down, a look at each of our subpopulations that we track. That gray vertical bar in each of the boxes is going to show you specifically what's happening this quarter. So you can see that we do have this increase in families this quarter. In older adults, we see a slight decrease. In youth, we also experience an increase of 10%, so quite significant for this category. And we also saw an increase in here last quarter as well. So potentially something to look further into as we see this number climbing. Veterans, a stark decrease. So that's always good news. And then in our chronically homeless category, we did see a slight increase this quarter, but as you can see from the previous lines, that has been remaining fairly steady throughout the year. Now, here's your chance to go look at system performance measures on your own. You have a little view there of what it looks like on our website with the most updated numbers from the quarter. But this is a whole interactive platform that you can explore on our website to get a deeper look at what our system performance measures are doing currently, and definitely recommend you go check that out. More than can be displayed on this quick report. This is our new and closed projects in the past year. So if you'll remember last quarter, we sort of changed up the way in which we're looking at this so that it is a full year tracking so that we could see the new projects coming on as well as the projects that have closed in the last year. Definitely up to you all if this is a way in which you do want to visualize project looks. Previously, what it looked like was just the new projects of the most recent quarter. The feedback we received was that that's not really telling a full picture of like, okay, so we have 16 new projects, but how many projects closed? So like really what's the story happening? So this was a way in which we can, I don't know, sort of meet in the middle to have a longer look at over the past year, what our balance is looking like with new and closed projects. And then our snapshot of clients served. So that circle there shows you those who have touched services and are still experiencing homelessness in the past year. So it gives you an idea of sort of the volume that our system sees. Another look at volume is the box next to it, and it's sort of broken up by program and served in the last month. So it's like a mini point in time of what each intervention was experiencing in terms of volume of clients. And those are not deduplicated. So it's more a look to see it like, wow, emergency shelter has this type of volume, and like all our rapid programs have this type of volume for a month in the quarter. And that is all I have on this report
Can I ask a quick
specifically.
question?
Yes.
In terms of projects, is there any way you could do, for instance, the number of beds versus
Well,
projects? So you had, I think, 16 new projects, I think, and 10 closed, but what does that equate? in
Right.
terms-
so this is something that you all have brought up previously and totally understand why you would want a understanding of that type of capacity our system has. And I have some information prepared from, we've been working with the HMIS staff to figure out with the data we have, what can we present in a realistic way that sort of speaks to that type of capacity. And this is, as I've mentioned previously, extremely difficult with the data that we have and the data that we collect. But we did go back and forth with them a bunch to sort of see if there was anything we could come up with. And basically the answer was no, but we do have some next steps. So I'm going to walk us through that for a second. And I have a document to read here so that I don't mess up all of the good things that the HMIS team has walked me through. So basically, you would have to look at shelters and housing programs. Right now, we just have projects and we don't really differentiate the two. When you're trying to track like this idea of capacity for a shelter, you have counts of clients served and you also have bed and unit counts that you are able to use. The issue is these numbers get updated once, maybe twice a year. And we don't really have a good look at what that like month over month look at is. And even if you were tracking that, there are many variables in the shelter space that could influence why your capacity would look very small one month and very large the next month. So it is not considered, it's very difficult to get sort of a reliable step-by-step number in that perspective that can be communicated out easily. For housing projects, we really only have counts of households served. And the HIC once a year also does a look at the total number of individuals and household enrolled on that night that we do the PIT count. So they're also getting that type of inventory. But again, this is a once a year look. And when we went through the data with the HMIS team, if you kind of do those counts throughout the year, the capacity really goes up and down on a housing project, depending on where that project is in its process of getting new clients on, of having just exited a bunch of new clients. And there's not as much a way to, in our HMIS data, to count like the vouchers that are there. Like this rapid rehousing program has this much money to serve this many households, but like that data is not always sort of communicated on the HMIS side of things. That exists in contract language and not in HMIS. So even if you could figure out a way to reliably be tracking for both shelter and housing, they're two different data sets that we would have to, as a community, somehow agree on like language or like a count of clients served as some sort of proxy to estimate where each project is so that you could merge that data so that we would have something that was a methodology that speaks to both housing and shelters. So with all of that in mind, like I said, went back and forth with the HMIS team a bunch and was hoping to have something that would be like, here's a better than nothing sort of look at how like some rough numbers, but we really don't even have that in a reliable way that would give an accurate look to like what you're hoping to receive in terms of this capacity question.
Even if you had, if you went back to the slide, closed versus open, couldn't you, just from a standpoint of beds available, whether there were people in them or not, I'm just curious, with the closed projects and new projects, how many beds that is, not whether they were filled or not. I mean,
Well, you could do like, shelters track
Yeah.
beds, housing projects do not. It's not tracked in that same way. You have, for the most part, it is money a program is receiving to serve a certain number of households, but if you're expected to serve 25 households, that can be 25 households how many times over in a year?
Yeah.
Or not. You could have just 25 households filled for an entire year, and that's gonna be it. And if you look especially a difference between like permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing, there's
Yeah.
higher turnover in the rapid side. So, and with emergency shelter as well, those numbers simply are not, like for a closed project, you could maybe look at the total number of clients they served in a 5-year period if that shelter was open for 5 years, but then there's some shelters that are open for 10 years, some that are open for 2 years. So that wouldn't really be comparable with a new project coming in that was a shelter that was supposed to serve 50 beds. Like the context is so different on each side that we haven't figured out a way to communicate that or track it. If that helps. Conceptualize that at all.
I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just thinking, okay, if you had a project a shelter that was open and it had 100 beds, and then you had a project that you closed and it was 50 beds, regardless of how many served, I'm just from a capacity point of view, you'd have a net differential of 50. So I'm just curious from the emergency shelters in particular, of the new projects, how many beds in those facilities, and then how many were closed? How many beds?
I can ask if that is
Does that make sense?
I can go back to the HMIS team and see if that's a metric we could get specifically for the shelter space. It wouldn't be comparable to any of the other projects.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Mike, too, we owe you all an update sometime in the next month, maybe two,
Okay.
on system modeling. I think that there's other places we can get some of that data. I'm not sure that you can pull good data on that out of HMIS necessarily, but Natalie and I have been working on a project with HUD TA to really track like the what they call pathways that people use to move through the system. And that involves a lot of collection of how many beds are we using, how many units are we using, how much do those cost. We're trying to get down in the weeds with a lot of that stuff. So I hope we'll be able to answer some of those questions.
Yeah, and again, I'm just coming from a place where, okay, we had 16 new projects open and we had 10. So we had a net positive number of we've added so many more beds to the system. That's all.
Rachel, do you know? I was hoping to wrap that up with leading to the system modeling conversation of like, we don't have this information now for you for the most part, because it is so complex. It really does lead to how do we model our system to understand the capacity we have. And Natalie, if you want to add anything extra to that, you may, 'cause Natalie's been working very hard on that, but there are good things on the horizon that we are hoping this lead to, and it would not live on the homelessness trends report because of the nature of the complexity of it.
Great, thank you, Cleo. I think the only piece that I would add to this that, in addition to Brian's, is that system modeling does incorporate heavily a discussion of inventory as well for different project types. And that's where a lot of the complexity of system modeling comes from. So we are, as Brian mentioned, we are deep in the weeds on figuring out how do we quantify and then capture that information. So hopefully we'll be able to bring something to you soon.
And I will talk with HMIS about the shelter piece specifically, see what we can find. That's all. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Cleo. Any questions for Cleo? All right. Thank you very much, Cleo. We appreciate you providing us this information every quarter. And with that, we will move on to agenda item number 6, where we have Nicole Newhouse from the Arizona Housing Coalition, and she will share the latest on 2024 legislative priorities.
Hi, y'all. Sorry for the delay. Couple of things. We are convening a stakeholder session on September 17th to gather feedback in order to run a piece of legislation that appropriately addresses homelessness next session, as opposed to being reactive to homeless legislation that is brought forward. We are going to host two sessions on the 17th, one focused on rural communities and another focused on urban communities. We're going to have about a 2-hour session. It's going to be virtual, and there'll be breakout rooms so that we can really identify who we want to address, because we just don't have enough money to address everybody. What I want us to do is to be really thoughtful about coming up with pragmatic solutions where we can deliver results and really be in a strong place to offer alternatives to lawmakers. So that is coming up. If you have an interest in attending, please do let me know. You can email directly. I am driving, otherwise I would give you a link to a form, but you can connect with me via my email, which is nicole@azhousingcoalition.org. The other thing is, many people know that we did not get state LIHTC renewed last session. So we are focusing on developing our strategy to ensure that state LIHTC is renewed and ideally expanded. We are going to be starting with a small group of stakeholders in the present. I guess our meeting is set up for next week. If anybody has an interest in contributing to that conversation, please do let me know. One of the things that I've heard from nonprofit developers is they'd like to see the removal of, for nonprofits to have to do a state tax, get rid of their state tax exemption. So if you have an interest in that, please also let us know. And then two other things for next session. One, as many of you know, the Department of Housing will be undergoing a sunset review. For those that are not aware, every agency has to be reviewed to make sure they should have continuation. We anticipate that there may be some arrows thrown at the department as a result of the Common Sense Institute's report last session. So what I will be asking all members to do is to provide a letter from your organization indicating how long you've worked with the department and then the value the department has provided the community. And if you or any of your partners have an interest in doing that, I would love that letter on letterhead sent to me. So should those arrows be thrown, we have a scat of letters that we can present in support of the department. And then finally, we are going to be looking at whether or not we're going to run again the Yes in God's Backyard bill. And we will begin stakeholder sessions in the next 30 days or so. And that, I think, is the exhaustive, if not rapidly delivered information I have for y'all. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Nicole. That was a lot. Do we have any questions from the board or comments from the board?
I have a question for Nicole. I did see that you invited us to those two sessions, and I'm wondering if you're also inviting folks with lived experience to participate in those sessions as well, specifically those from the Action Nexus, that LEAC group. Just wondering if you're considering having folks around the table with lived experiences.
Absolutely, Tish. We want all of the voices, and we know that those with lived experience would provide arguably the most important feedback. So we absolutely want that voice at the table.
So does that mean I can forward your invitation?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tish.
Nicole,
Jess.
let's see, Mary. Jessica Cruz here. I believe I inquired about the session for the 17th. Are we going to be getting a follow-up, like calendar invites or reminder?
Yes,
Still in the
I'm gonna do, I wanted to get the interest form out there, and then I was going to target the invitation to those that had an interest in the urban, rural, or both, so that I can make sure that the invites went to the right people for the right session.
Okay, great. Just didn't want to miss it. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments for Nicole? Thank you for all your good work, Nicole. Go ahead, Brian.
I was just gonna say, we'll be able to send that out with the outgoing minutes as well.
All right. Moving on to agenda item number 7. Last month, we heard from the Coordinated Entry Collaborative, and this month we're going to hear from the Data Collaborative. We like to touch base with all our collaboratives once a month, so very happy to have the Data Collaborative here to talk to us today and give us an update on what they're doing and their progress towards the strategic plan. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm sharing my screen here. Make sure that pulls up. Okay. So myself, Thaddeus Gassy, along with Stephanie Duncan, we have been the co-chairs for the Data Collaborative. So we're going to go over the strategic plan item updates. So here are the current strategic plan deliverables. We're going to be going over them on the next few slides. Core collaborative governance responsibilities, evaluating the landscape of non-HMIS participating agencies, ensuring system data quality, ASHAC coordination, using data analysis, and community data literacy planning. So for the first one, for this core collaborative governance responsibilities, these are the core governance responsibilities of the Data Collaborative. Number 1, review annually the HMIS policies and procedures. That annual review is completed and awaiting approval right now. Next, number 2, we've processed 10 data requests so far this year. And last, number 3, we've processed 6 new agency requests. And I want to add that we also spent a number of weeks refining the new agency onboarding process alongside Solari's HMIS team, so it's a little more streamlined. All right, next. We would like HMIS data to, as much as possible, represent a real accurate picture of homelessness. This happens if all meaningful interactions with those experiencing homelessness are recorded and all established homeless service providers enter data into HMIS consistently. So these were the steps we took to get a better understanding of who we might be missing and why. The last upcoming step, which is the unchecked box, is a final report to the board with suggestions going forward. I'm going to move on to the next one. So we want data to be confidently understood, used, and shared without the need for data quality concerns, disclaimers, or issues preventing the release of data. For this, we worked with Solari's HMIS team to identify where data quality issues are occurring. We checked both federal reporting and also made a community survey to sharpen that focus. The work group is done meeting, and the only piece that is left is supporting Solari in the development of new training curriculum, which is our sub-goal number 2 down there. Moving on to the second to last one. The Data Insights Workgroup was tasked to continue the ongoing analysis done with partners at ASHAC, which is Arizona Housing Analytics Collaborative. Oh, let me go back. Sorry. Went forward too far. This analysis was focused on returns to homelessness, which is very similar, but not identical to the system performance measure of returns to homelessness, but some parallels. ASHAC's analysis process is virtually complete. The work group is now in the stage of figuring out which pieces of the analysis are important to communicate out, who they should be communicated to and how, and what system actions could be taken based on that analysis. And this last one here. We wanted to increase community data literacy and utilization of data by creating a multi-level data literacy plan. We want a homeless service community that is comfortable with and capable of using available data tools as they improve services across the continuum of care. So we created a work group and we drew up a work plan. We drafted a data literacy rubric tool as a guide to assess agencies and identify opportunities for improvement. The work group is still creating a comprehensive action plan that outlines system goals. And that's it for the updates for the data collaborative. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Thaddeus. You guys have been very busy. Do we have any questions or comments from the board on any of the updates that Thaddeus provided us on the data collaborative? I just had one question for you, Thaddeus. Do you have a timeline of when you think the report on the non-HMIS utilizers will be presented to the board?
Leo might have an answer for that.
Cleo.
Excellent job on the presentation, Thaddeus. Thank you for showing all of that. That report, I would think, could come to the board late fall. Yes, a lot of the work is already completed for it, and it's pretty much just making sure that all work group members have a moment to come all back together to sort of finalize a message of that compiles the research. Okay.
Awesome. Liz.
I just want to say excellent job. It was fantastic to see, like, from our strategic plan, the items that were assigned to your collaborative and like you all specifically addressing each of them. It's really a concise way for us to get the feedback from the collaborative on where things are at. Is there anything that you all are in need of from the board to support your efforts?
Nothing comes to mind from myself. Again, if
Thaddeus,
You muted, Thaddeus.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't have anything in mind. If Cleo or Stephanie had anything, please.
I would say that next month you will see the HMIS policies come through here, and we will have a request on there for some additional autonomy of the data collaborative to approve data requests, and seeing if there is flexibility there so that everything doesn't have to move through the board and we can get data out to the community quicker. So that'll be coming at some point to you all with those HMIS policy updates.
Thank you. Great work.
Any other comments or questions from the board or the public? All right. Once again, thank you guys so much for being here. Thaddeus and Stephanie, appreciate you. Nice job. All right. Item number 8 on the agenda is MAG updates. MAG staff will provide updates on ongoing collaborative applicant duties and projects, including COC board membership, recruitment, emergency shelter RFP, and other recurring tasks.
Thank you, Co-Chair Melanie. Had a few updates today. First one, our youth homelessness specialist, Matt Finley, is not able to join today, but he had some bullet points that I'm going to walk through real quick. First of all, the YHSI Youth Homelessness Systems Improvement Grant is up and running. So we got the award letter, right? We've been waiting for that for a few months after getting notice that we received the funding back in June. We finally got the award letter in August. And however, we are still waiting on the grant agreement. So they got to roll these out in 3 different steps at HUD apparently. But the good news is that our budget has been approved. And so we know what we're doing. With that, we're able to plan for some additional activities that we're expecting to get underway that are really hopefully going to support the application that we're submitting tomorrow, which is for the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Project grant. The distinction here is YHSI is an infrastructure kind of system building grant. It's worth about 1.7 million. And it's a statewide effort. The YHDP funding would be somewhere between $5 and $10 million to pay for actual programming. So pretty critical distinction there. And really excited to submit that. We're hopeful that will be considered this year, especially with the YHSI funding under our belt and all of the work that's gone into that so far. We think we're much more competitive. Not to mention that Matt Finley's a heck of a good guy. So, we're going to try to leverage that any way we can. Let's see. One of the things that's really critical, however, that I wanted to bring to the board's attention is that we need to look at some charter updates that are required to activate YHTP and YHSI for that matter. So Matt will be sending out invitations to members of the board. We're going to hold 2 sessions to really go deep on youth homelessness stuff. One of the things about the YHDP funding that everybody should understand is that HUD envisions that funding being rolled out through and kind of under the auspices and guidance of a youth action board that would essentially mirror the COC's board and control a lot of the youth specific funding. The goal at the HUD level is to really increase autonomy and empowerment of youth over the actual youth related services. So there would be some charter language updates implied there, and we need to have everybody kind of understand what those are. And the goal would be to bring these charter updates to the board in September in time for this grant. So stay tuned for that, and please just keep it on your radar. We need everybody to attend these info sessions when they happen. So it'll be the same content in both sessions, but just to give you an alternative time to join. Was going to mention real quick, the COC Builds NOFO intent to apply form has been sent out. So you can see we've added a timeline to our website as of last week. And then we sent out on Friday last week an intent to apply form for any potential applicants who are interested in this. The goal here really is to get a gauge of what the interest level in the community might be. We're not sure yet if we're going to need to do an actual RFP, put up a Dropbox, do that whole thing, or if we are going to be working with 1 to 2 funders or developers on this project. So we're hoping to get responses back by the 6th of September, and then we will go from there, and we will be keeping the board apprised along the way. As well, wanted to mention too, we're going to need volunteers for a review panel. So we've spoken with 2 folks from around the community. We've got somebody from ULI who's willing to help us with the review, and then somebody from LISC as well. And we'd like to have at least 3 to 5 folks on this review panel for potential applications coming in. Anyone from the board who's interested, has experience to do this, we would love to have you. We will be sending out an email and just looking for your response in the form of an email. So stay tuned for that as well. Last thing is that we need to update our board membership. So now is the time annually where we get into that. So we are going to also need 3 volunteers at a minimum from the board to help us form a selection panel for new membership. We will be including that in the email going out as well. So if you're interested in doing that this year, please just respond, let us know, and then we'll form the panel that way. We're going to be posting membership recruitment this week, and that'll stay open for 2 weeks. We'll collect applications, and then we will all meet when we have a panel together and review those. So the plan is to have new membership coming in about a month. Last but not least, wanted to make sure that co-chairs had an opportunity to say thank you to an outgoing board member. It's bittersweet, but we know TJ is on his way to doing amazing things. So over to you, co-chairs.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I definitely just wanted to recognize TJ Reed, now at Solari, back at Solari, but formerly with Maricopa County, for just his amazing leadership and everything he brought to the COC board. He's just such an asset to this community, and I'm glad he's still in it, but very sad that he's not in it in this capacity at the COC board level. But yes, he's not here, but maybe I'll send him the minutes or something that we all said thank you. Go ahead, Vicky.
I just want to echo what you're saying, but also just comment, TJ has been such a wealth of knowledge and so supportive in our community. I think we're definitely sorry to see him go, but happy for the next adventure. We certainly wish him well. But again, a vital member all along. He will be missed.
Thank you. And then Brian, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you know how many vacancies we have and what those vacancies are, like what categories, and if we have people that are currently on the board that are timing out?
I'll need to go back to my reference on who's timing out. I don't think anyone is timing out. We have 5 seats currently. We will be needing to fill a regional funder seat / regional governance seat. So that would be the county seat. More work to do on the charter just to see who is even eligible to fill that seat. Obviously, the county would be. Not sure if there would be other charter or members of the community who could also sit in. We have lots of room, as always, for folks with lived experience, in particular, youth with lived experience. We are trying to really make sure that we are reflecting that point of view across the board, as always. And then I think we're set on funders. I think we're always in the market for community seats. So anybody in the community who has, interesting perspective on this has done work in this field, and then also from an advocacy representative as well.
Thank you. Any other comments or board discussion for Brian? Questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to an action item. Item number 9, 2024 NOFO interview questions. MAG staff will continue our discussion of the 2024 NOFO scoring with members of the board to develop interview questions for the rank and review process. And once again, just like last time, those members representing organizations that are applying for COC funds this year will be asked to refrain from participating in this conversation. Thank you. Sorry. Dylan and Cleo.
Thank you, everyone. Let me get this looking a little nicer for us. Is that better? That's a little bit better. Okay. So this Miro board should look a little bit familiar at this point in time. This is what Dylan and I set up to figure out our priorities for this year for the NOFO, as well as make sure the interview questions are reviewed and shored up for our rank and review panel to ask to applicants.
Leo, would you mind reminding folks, and maybe Dylan, if you have a minute to put it in the chat, they can pull this up on their own computers if that's too small to read.
Yes. Dylan will get the Miro board up on the chat for us for you all to have that link available once again. But basically, we have completed the priority portion of this in a meeting earlier this month. And then now we just have left the interview question. So that is this right here. You can flip through the document on the Miro board. If you're in person, there are printed versions for us on the counter over there if you're interested in going through them. But basically, we've just got some questions to go through with you all in terms of making sure that these questions are what we want to be asking applicants still. So these were updated last year as well, quite a bit, I think, from where they were previously. So I'm not anticipating tons of changes with this. However, if the board wants to have a conversation about totally changing up the interview questions, this is the time that we have it. For context, the rank and review panel has the local applications that are completed via the or that are completed via every renewal and new applicant. The scorecard for those, which is basically the rubric for that local application, is also on the counter over here and in the Miro board for people to look at online. Rank and review has those, goes through those written applications for 2 days, and then has this interview process right after that. So the point of the interview is to ideally fill in gaps that the scorecard doesn't already ask, or maybe asks in a different way and provides organizations the opportunity to communicate through something other than a written narrative response about their project to the rank and review panel. So if you look through the interview questions, you've got them separated out for renewal projects, which different questions, but very similar between PSH and Rapid. Then you have your questions for new projects. And then you'll see questions for new coordinated entry and new HMIS projects. Take a minute to look at those. And then we've got some questions here for you. First of which is, what value do you hope to gain from the interview process? I just let you know sort of like the outlines of why we have an interview, but is there anything specific you are wanting to see agencies respond to in an interview process that would be different from our written narrative scorecard? And just see if anyone has thoughts there for us. I don't have a timer for us, but my mother was an elementary school teacher growing up, so I'm happy sitting in silence and waiting for responses. She taught me well.
So if there are things that aren't currently, because I mean, some of the things I care most about are leveraging resources and how folks are addressing race equity, but all of those are currently in here. So are you looking for us to talk about things that we don't see in here necessarily?
I would say let's get an idea for why you value these generally, and then look at whether or not they are missing in here, or like most accurately represented in the questions.
Yeah, I mean, to Rachel's point, like a lot of this is with the updates that we made to the questions, but I think it's important, like the housing is healthcare, the social determinants of health, how our organizations addressing that.
I think for me, and this is the interview with the organizations that are getting scored, right? Just to confirm.
Yeah, so anyone sent in an application also gets an interview.
Okay, great. And so for me, like the most important piece to the interview process is their opportunity to provide additional context to things that are scored through reporting. So like our ability, or the rank and review team's ability to, receive really relevant information that could inform discretionary points that just isn't able to be communicated through the reports.
It's useful, thank you. Okay.
And then, sorry, was Dylan gonna put the link to the mural board in the chat? Oh, it looks like it's disabled.
Yeah.
Was there someone else who could go to access it?
There's an email in your inbox right now that should have it.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you, Dylan. Okay, shall we move on to the next question? Is there anything that should be asked to applicants that isn't already addressed in the scorecards that you're seeing? And please feel free to say, no, these look perfect. We're happy with them.
I don't know that I have any feedback. They look pretty standard and pretty similar to what we had last year. Maybe
This is exactly
Okay.
what the 2023 ones are. So this is just our opportunity to have any edits to the 2023 versions, should we decide we want to.
Okay.
Cleo, just sort of to stimulate thought here, would it be possible to run through the priorities that the group came up with on the 12th?
Yes. Dylan, is there any chance you could pull that up while my screen is being shared? Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So Dylan will get that going now.
So as a recap, the board met for a special meeting on the 12th of August, voted to approve a set of priorities for the scoring process that's about to take place. And I thought super productive meeting, really strong priorities that came out of that. Those are included in the minutes, by the way, for the 8/12 meeting that happened.
Great. So yeah, these interview questions, as Cleo mentioned earlier, supplement what is included on the scorecard. So some of the things that you see pop up in those interview questions, right, they're that personal element with these agencies that might not come across in just raw data. So, for example, that includes how do you incorporate client input or feedback, or some of the elements that are maybe not as easily defined in just a narrative where it's, what's the specific change from last year to this year, really putting agencies on the spot in how they actually address these questions in real time, even though they're given the interview questions prior to actually speaking. There is still this element of exciting drama when they have to say these words in real time. So with that in mind, a lot of the criteria that's on the scorecard is either project performance or project design. And so the interview questions could expand on that in theory. And a lot of them, compared to what we have in 2023, do just that, right? There's crossover perhaps on some of the scorecard areas, like talking about challenges related to race equity, right? Gives an opportunity to further expand it. As Brian mentioned, board priorities were developed a couple weeks ago to further cement, exactly what it is the board is looking to fund and focus on for new projects. And so I'm going to read through those as a reminder in case it's helpful to think whether or not some of these priorities could also be addressed in interview questions as well, which have very specific score tied to them that impacts the ranking. So
real quick, Dylan, if you guys don't mind, do you think, Cleo, you could shift this over to show the interview questions? So as Dylan reads them, we can have the reference point. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
Perfect.
And just keep in mind that this shows the questions for the renewal projects. But if you flip through, then you'll get the other ones too. I don't know if that works while I'm sharing. It does not.
Thank you.
But yeah.
Sweet. So one of the priorities, preference to new and existing projects that clearly demonstrate care coordination efforts through partnerships with health agencies.
Yeah, so you bring up a really good point that where is that where is that in the scorecard? If otherwise we'd have to make sure it's in the question so that the rank and review committee would even have the information to be able to score them on that, or have the information to be able to prioritize it because of that. So is there somewhere else in the scorecard where we are have a narrative that looks at their
Yeah.
integration with healthcare agencies?
Thinking it might be one of two ways. Each project does have a an opportunity to provide an overview or summary of their project that could reference that. Other narratives related to other elements of their program could also bring it in, but those are like up to the discretion of the applicant, right? It's whether or not they include that as part of their response. However, we do have, it looks like in the second interview question for both renewal types and then a slightly different but similar second question for the new projects. How are you leveraging other housing and healthcare resources throughout the project?
I'm sorry, where do you see that question? How are you? Go ahead.
That's question 2 on the interview questions from 2023.
What innovative practices are you using to address challenges within your program?
How fascinating.
I'm realizing something went wrong. We have 2 different versions going on.
Because I'm like, that sounds fantastic. I just don't see it here, but I think that, go ahead, sorry.
No, sorry about that. Thank you for pointing that out, Liz. I think somehow we have a different version in the Miro board versus the printed out form, which is very confusing for everyone. So apologize for that. And I do believe that the printed version is the finalized one, although I could be wrong. So what we may need to do is ensure what you want from this, and then we edit the interview questions on the back end. So Dylan has quickly sped read through the interview questions amazingly. The only difference is this, the online one that you have there reads innovative practices, and the paper form we have is how are you leveraging other housing and healthcare resources throughout the project, so that it does match what's on the new projects as well. So again, apologies for that.
Yeah, no problem at all. And I'm sure it's a handout that you all provided in person too, so my apologies. But do you want to maybe, I don't see it in our board packet either, but do you want to maybe send them out and then we can review to make sure that the priorities we all agreed upon have interview questions that will help make sure we've got enough of an answer that rank and review can then use for when they do their prioritization?
So it could be, Liz, that, ultimately these questions, any of them could change at any point. So we could decide, right now as the board, whether or not that second project or the second question, is the one on leveraging housing and healthcare resources or retaining that innovative practices one. The exact language of that, let me type up in a sticky note here so we can see it. Oh, you're doing it.
Mhm.
Great.
Throughout the
I just wanted to point out too, for the new projects, question number 2 actually asks applicants to attach a letter from documenting their housing resources and their healthcare, how they're leveraging those resources as well.
Yeah, so that's like that additional level of verification is something that we've always requested from new projects to sort of enter into the COC funding, and then once they become a renewal, it switches to just them letting us know how they are currently already doing it. Because a new project hasn't done it yet, so we need some sort of proof of that. And then the language you see on the sticky note there is what we could solidify right now as the question 2 for renewals, if desired. And this is, I believe, what we used last year.
Let's do this, guys. Let's write up what we did last year. Sticky note, physical handout. make it really clear which of these versions we're going with. And I think we can send those out as a board packet with the minutes, and then we can ask for feedback from those. And Co-Chair Milne, if it's okay, we can sort of, I think we can maybe vote to approve that when those go out, that's what we're going to go with, unless there's any objection.
So vote today to approve what goes out with the packet.
Which is going to be what we used last year.
How does the board feel about that, given that I think that the second question would be what is now up in the board in purple? Forget, you seem like you have something to say.
Yeah, I would, if we're gonna do that, which however we go about doing that, I want the leverage healthcare question to be included.
Yeah,
If that wasn't on there last year, that's the one I want.
yeah, the printed copies for us have that leveraging healthcare and housing resources, both for the renewal projects and the new projects. And I think that's super important.
And I guess really what I'm thinking, and I'm also trying to remember what it's like to like complete one of these. But if we're really, really serious about it, I think we've had projects that have been funded for a long time that probably never actually showed any letters of support from their folks with healthcare. If we're saying it's a real thing, it would be great to actually see that somehow demonstrated and not just somebody saying it's happening. Which I think stinks if you're the one having to do it. But if we're literally saying new people, you have to prove it and everybody else you don't, and it could be a thing that I just think we need to think about what that looks like. Because it's something we haven't asked for historically. We weren't saying healthcare, so it might behoove us to really look at across the system, how is it happening, not just what people, because you can be I mean, we all know you can write stuff, but like, it would be great to have like more than just that happen, which also can be just written, I guess.
Yeah, one quick thing for the letter for new projects. It's incorporated into the interview question because it is a requirement for any new projects that are funded with COC dollars to include that the letter with housing and healthcare leveraging for the consolidated application. So that's sort of the distinction between asking for it for new and not for renewal. Because if a new agency is funded and they're ranked in the priority listing,
Got it.
HUD just requires it for the new ones. And so this interview question essentially just asks, like, if you are funded, like, is this something that you'll be able to do once? Yeah.
Are there any other changes on the paper form from what's on the Miro board right now, other than question 2?
Nope. Only that one.
Okay, perfect. And then we had like a couple of priorities. One was like the engagement in the healthcare system, and that was really around like how you're coordinating services for your member. And then we had another one on leveraging resources to add like unit capacity to the system. So do we feel like this question and its response will help us address kind of both of those priority areas? Or is there a need to modify this language at all? Maybe I'll offer a suggestion. How are you leveraging other housing, financial, and housing and healthcare, or financial? We need to be looking at like any additional funds or resources that are being leveraged too, if we're going to be able to truly answer that other priority. Is it housing funds and healthcare resources?
Would other members of the board want to modify that question to include other resources as well?
So I think housing resources covers it, housing and healthcare resources. But Liz, what are you proposing to add?
Anything around like the financials, and maybe instead it's how are you leveraging other housing and healthcare resources throughout the project to improve coordination of care for members and expand unit capacity within the community? So we direct them towards what we're trying to get at when we mention this.
So what I'm gonna do is stop sharing this screen and go to the questions on my other screen, so we have them ready to go. And we can incorporate that language to see what it looks like. So Liz, do you have that?
Yeah, we can try. How are you leveraging other housing and healthcare resources to improve care coordination for members and increase unit capacity? And we'll see what other folks think.
I like the addition of unit capacity. I just don't know if we need throughout the project now.
Forget you look.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to figure out. So I'm thinking I'm in the room, I'm answering this question. That's a deep question over two things that we really need them to cover both. Is this actually two questions? Only because like when you ask the question, they're gonna, like, I don't want them to not be prompt. That's just a lot. If you thoroughly explain part one, you might not get to part two. So I don't know if it's actually two separate questions.
Yeah, I hear you totally on that. Can we scroll down just a little bit just to see the other questions?
I will say programs, and I'm sure, those who have had to gone through the interviews can attest to this. It is rapid fire and you have about 5 minutes to get through a lot of material. I know Jessica's been through it.
Do we limit it to 5 questions?
Yep, that's correct. So if we did split them up, it would just be a matter of choosing which other question would be removed as a result of that.
Does the budget show well? Generally, do they reflect well the dollars leveraged for housing resources?
I don't think so.
Like it does it, so I get, because I haven't ever completed this application, is it literally just here's these, is it the overall project budget that's there? And so then things that aren't covered by whatever our money is, so if you're getting, is there a place there that you would put United Way funding or whatever else? Like, can you see that in the budget?
Unless it's like specific units for that project.
Okay.
But that doesn't necessarily include like, if an agency partners with someone else for supportive services or.
Okay. No, I don't have an answer then.
Could we do it 2A, 2B?
Very creative.
Maybe it's just explaining that they need to cover both of them and they need to do it in a concise way. They get the questions ahead of time. So maybe leave the words like that and hope that we said this was a priority though. So I'm trying to figure out like, how do we be sure to get the questions answered if that's not showing up in the scorecard, right? That one doesn't show up.
Right. And something to consider, the race equity question did slightly change in the scorecard this year, and does specifically call out points for year-over-year changes. And another element is identifying and addressing gaps.
So Dylan, are you saying we're already scoring them once on race equity in the actual scorecard, and this is like, might be duplicative?
Potentially, yeah, there are 8 points allocated toward race equity on the scorecard. Each interview question is worth 2 points each.
It says 1 point,
1
but
point.
you're saying 2 points.
Yeah, 1 point last year.
Okay,
But
okay.
in 2024, it's, yep. Sorry.
Question, is it more important that we know how they're leveraging these resources to do either and or both coordination and increased capacity?
I think for me, yeah, because it's like oftentimes members have very significant behavioral and medical needs. And so we really need our COC providers to understand how to access that system and be like leveraging it for the care coordination. But additionally, another one of our priorities was that they are leveraging dollars to be able to expand unit capacity. So I didn't see a way around trying to get to both points.
So kind of given Liz's great idea, like what if 2 was just tell us about your leverage, A in the healthcare and healthcare coordination, B in housing, increasing unit capacity or in the housing realm? I know it's technically 6 questions, but it's still only worth the 1/2 points. Are we at 2?
Yeah, yeah, so you're saying like 1 point for
Yeah,
A and
like
1
have question 2 be on leverage and have them explain in their interview how they're leveraging resources for healthcare coordination and housing, increasing unit capacity.
And you think question 4 is still necessary then? Given the scorecard as a group, do we think that? I mean, it matters, it's important, I'm just asking. I don't know.
Is there really a place on the scorecard where like, you know, maybe they've, because I think what happens often is like they do their race equity toolkit and it's like, is there enough place for them to really say, okay, and we've identified this as the problem and like we're working to do this about it? Is that, do we feel like that's actually in the narrative? Rather than them just like completing the toolkit?
Yeah, it should be. It was pretty. The questions for the narrative for the race equity were different this year.
So Jessica, like, do you think that 4 is covered in the scorecard then to where we could like remove it from the interview questions?
Yeah, it does specifically say how identify what you did differently and how you're continuing to progress
Okay.
and implement new things, you know, to show that your agency is making it a priority.
Then I think for me, given that, I would propose we update our interview questions to remove 4 and make number 2 separate with the addressing the healthcare for care coordination and then also additional community resources to expand unit capacity.
Just for reference, here's our race equity section.
pretty beefy, the way it's worded up at top. Easier to look at that scoring in the bottom right, the white square, which outlines like all of the specific elements included in the race equity category as a whole.
Yeah, the 1 point for demonstration of proactive year-over-year changes, right?
Yeah. So with that, just to kind of continue the discussion, I would propose going back to the interview questions and then removing 4 and modifying 2 to make it into 2 questions.
How are other board members feeling about that? Board members that are allowed to talk about this subject only, please.
I'm just a yes and kind of girl, so I
Mhm.
want to add more time to the interviews and ask the questions I want to ask.
Can we make the
So,
interview
like,
6 minutes?
Yes, I don't know. I mean, I know, I just, because I don't want to take the focus off of it. It seemed like the scorecard is enough. And I don't, like, we don't have anything to score the other 2 things, so on the scorecard, so I feel like I want them to have time to talk about that. And it's just, I think we can have our cake and eat it too, but that's, like, I think it could be both. I'm not
In order,
managing the process.
yeah. Very quickly, I would say usually interviews are about 12 minutes long each. And the rank and review committee logs on to Zoom at 8 o'clock and we log off at 5 PM. And because of the number of projects, it really is scheduled to the very last minute. So we don't have lots of room. Usually. And this year we are anticipating another handful of new projects coming through, which adds more time.
I guess the question is, do we think that if we want deep answers on those, that we can answer all of these questions in 12 minutes? And get stuff that they're gonna actually score and make. Because really, it's the rank and review committee that makes they're gonna come up with the options, right? And they know the priorities, so. I don't know.
And they're going to utilize the list and the priorities that we've given them to make that second or third ranking.
Right.
They have the ability to move things around based on those priorities.
Yes, this is just ensuring that you're getting the information from the agency in order for them to have an educated understanding to make those priority lists.
I feel like it does do an odd weight to it if we have a scorecard and then we ask again,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's gonna be depending on what they say in the room. That feels, especially when that question's later down and we're pressed on time. I guess I think it can go either way. I'm not gonna stand in the way either way, but right now I'm thinking I agree with Liz, remove it so that they have enough time to actually talk about the things that we don't have any time for. And then people are not penalized because they answer thoroughly up top and now they're out of space and they can't answer it. And then we have that information.
How do other board members feel about getting rid of the race equity question on here, because we do have points for it in the application itself, and making 2 into 2 separate questions?
I think that's a great idea. It's already there. So why are we asking it a second time?
Thank you, Danielle.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, is that okay with you?
Yeah, it's up to you all.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we're here to provide suggestions with the fuller context of the NOFA, but really, if you feel that what is asked on the scorecard is sufficient for the race equity questions, and there aren't additional pieces of information you would want to know from an interview, then that is the discussion.
Just to confirm, this would be both the renewal PSH and rapid rehousing questions. Those are parallel. So removing the race equity from both interventions and, okay.
I guess unless there's something else we want to ask this feels like we get this information. Is there something else we want to ask about race equity that's not in the scorecard? That's a different question. I know you guys love me. I'm just because it is such a priority and it matters so much. And I I don't want anybody to get the message that that's not what we think.
All right, we need to come to consensus here.
Somebody say something else.
So it sounds to me like the majority of members who can vote on this are in support of removing the race equity question only because we have it covered with lots of points in the actual application and breaking this into two questions, one on leveraging housing resources and creation of units, and one on the leveraging of the healthcare coordination. And with that, would anyone like to make a motion that these are our interview questions?
I will do it, but I do not do good motions. So what Rachel said, I move.
I'll second.
Thank you, Danielle. All those in favor in the room, please say yay.
Oh, yay.
Yay. All those opposed, please say nay. And Brian, will you do a roll call vote of those online?
Liz DaCosta,
Yay.
Chris Hallett,
Yay.
Jessica Raymond,
Yay.
Danielle Wright,
Yay.
Thank you. The motion passes. We've provided clear direction to Cleo and Dylan on how to proceed with the interview questions. Thank you, everybody.
Rachel, can I make a comment now that it's been passed?
Yes.
I would just throw out, I totally understand how agencies that are funded should not be involved in the vote. I just want to throw out the thought, at times it seems counterproductive that key agencies are like, can't be involved even for any kind of feedback in the discussion. Now, let's say you can't vote, which I certainly agree, but to offer no feedback, it just seems counterproductive in terms of the amount of millions of dollars that some of the agencies receive play a key role, and to offer no feedback. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, because I'm not talking about voting. I'm just saying, is that make total sense that members can't participate in any feedback because they play such I guess, a pivotal role in some of the services that are delivered.
So I do believe there is feedback after the whole process, correct, Dylan and Cleo? Feedback from applicants?
Yeah, a couple ways it comes up.
But I just want to address, I mean, I think we really have to walk a fine line
I
as
know,
board members,
and I'm
because not all board members are applicants and not all applicants are board
understand.
members. So I think that's the.
Mike, just if I may, I think you raise a good point. HUD has just been super clear about the language. So the HUD language says no continuum of care board member may participate in or influence discussions if they are receiving funding from the COC. So I think, in fact, I was under the assumption that you all would be able to participate in these conversations as long as you didn't vote, and it's pretty clear that you cannot. So that's what we went with. We wanted to err on the side of caution.
Okay, thank you.
All right, item number 10 is request for future agenda items. The next item is a request for future items. Do board members have any other action or discussion or ideas for future agenda items that you'd like to see?
This is Vicky. I would just like to continue the progress that we're making to hear from committee updates toward their strategic plans. I would hope that we could identify a committee to present at the next meeting.
Thank you. Any other board
This
members?
is Liz. Yeah, sorry, this is Liz. I had to switch to phone, but yeah, I just second that, and I'm wondering if we can hear an update from the ESG collaborative.
Yeah, this is Brian. I work with ESG Collaborative. I'll talk to Margaret, the chair, and I don't think it'll be a problem to do that. I will
Alright.
say September, I
Thank
think
you so much.
we're starting to have a packed agenda, so it may not be a very long update, but TBD.
And then I'd really also like to prioritize the collaborative. We haven't heard from them in quite a while.
Yeah. Maybe want to throw it out there too. So we're overdue for our charter update. Part of the reason for that is that we'd held that back a little bit pending the YHSI and YHTP application phase. We knew this NOFA was going to be due. We knew that there were going to be updates to the charter. I think there are probably other things that we want to discuss just related to the committees and the collaboratives and so forth, and like the work that they're doing around the strategic plan. So I would just say maybe bear all that in mind, but anyway, yeah, more to come.
Great, thank you. Any other future agenda items from board members? Seeing none. Next item is the board roundtable. I want to open up the floor for a roundtable of announcements, events, challenges that you want to address, or opportunities to come together for a new idea. Oh, Chris Hallett's got one. Chris.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I want to commend Liz, Jessica Raymond, and Nicole at the Arizona Housing Conference. I think they all represented themselves tremendously. At least the ones I went to and saw them speak, I was in awe. Really, you guys are knocking it out of the park, doing some great things. So I appreciate all that you do in your respective roles and bringing it to all of us there. Learned a ton from both of your sessions. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Some of us were too late to register and we're told that it was sold out. So I missed it, but I heard great things. All right. Anything else from any other board members?
Just to mention, the next Project Connect is this Wednesday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the First Christian Church in Phoenix.
Tish, can you remind us where that is?
That is, let me look up the address. Oh my goodness. You had to ask that question. Oh boy. I cannot find it right now.
That's okay. I can Google it too.
Google it. Yes, Google it. Or you can actually go on our website, the Keys to Change website. We have a Project Connect page, which will connect you to the address and also volunteer opportunities if any of you would like to volunteer. And also send your folks that need assistance. Because as you all know, Project Connect is the campus on the road.
Awesome. Thank you, Tish. All right. With no further business, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all. See you next month.